Oh, is this the first lady? Okay. Welcome. Thank you for being brave.
What do you mean by less?
I mean, men need to enter relationships with women with healthy skepticism and assume they deserve less.
But shouldn't that just be a standard regardless?
Well, that's that's actually a very good point. The problem is most men don't know that.
But I think that goes for both parties, though. I mean, there should be a healthy level of skepticism, understanding that everybody has a standard on what they would accept and what they don't.
Yeah, the problem is that with women, that's kind of taught and reinforced and natural. With men, it's not.
What is the skepticism?
Men are taught to pedestalize women no matter what.
They're taught to what?
Men are taught to pedestalize women no matter what.
Okay.
Versus women typically don't need to be taught to be skeptical in the beginning of a relationship. Women are naturally skeptical because you guys are the more vulnerable sex.
Okay.
So you guys have to
Physically.
approach for many different ways.
Okay. So you're saying that men have not been instilled in them to be more skeptical?
Yeah.
Okay, so you think they have lower standards?
Well, it's not that they have lower standards. Well, some might have lower standards for sure.
Sure.
Some might even understand that they should have standards, and some might not necessarily vocalize their standards out of fear of being looked at as a misogynist or a sexist or some other pejorative term for being rational.
So you think that operating within that system, there's that like innate fear of being judged because they don't have that skepticism? Or where do you think that comes from more so is my question?
Because we live in a gynocentric society. So since we live in a gynocentric society, the female way of thinking typically prevails. The masculine way of thinking is looked at as demonic and evil.
What do you mean demonic and evil?
For example, I find it interesting that feminists always say that the patriarchy is evil, when in reality the patriarchy is what allows them to be feminists in the first place.
Do you think the patriarchy harms men?
I would argue the patriarchy is more beneficial to women than it is to men.
How so?
Because a minority of men run the patriarchy versus a majority don't. Versus women.
Don't they reinforce it though, the majority of it?
Excuse me?
So it's set by the minority of men, let's say, but then
Yes.
don't the majority reinforce it? So it creates this like big system, not just from one subset of people. That's why it's a system. Because if it was just like 5 people, how would that be ingrained within society? You would kind of need a large group of people to be echoing each other.
I don't really understand. What I'm trying to say is that men, right, are not really allowed to put out their standards or their worldviews when it comes to women because it's considered taboo and misogynistic. But on the other hand, women
But
are
in what
allowed to
way,
put
though?
out. What do you mean in what way?
I mean, a man can say like,
Sure, I'll
I
give you an example.
prefer-
If I say women need to obey men, a lot of women would look at me and say, you're a misogynist. That's not true. That's evil. That's bad. That's wrong. But if I were to say, we need to champion women and treat them like queens, everyone would cheer. Just like the other guy was trying to simp earlier saying this stuff. So the reality is we can't be critical of women. I find it interesting that the word misogyny is widely used, but no one even knows what misandry means.
But what do you mean we can't be critical of women? Wouldn't you say that both sexes are always being criticized for anything? Because I mean, women are being held to the physical esteem of like their looks and have to be submissive. So they are being criticized because you're saying that.
I would argue they're not taught to be submissive. If anything, they're made fun of for being submissive. One of the terms that you guys use to shame each other is calling each other's pick me.
Right, because
Women are demonized for following a man's lead and
so
being.
are men like simps, which are in essence the same essence. Like it's the same thing, just for different genders.
Well, here's the difference. When women simp on men, the man respects that woman and cherishes that. When men simp on women, they don't reciprocate. Because the problem is that women get simped on their entire life and don't know what that means, so they don't appreciate it. On the other hand, as a man, we might not get our first kiss until we're 20. So when a woman simps on us, we actually appreciate it and treat her well. That's the difference. Women don't know how to behave when they get validation.
What do you mean women don't know how to behave? You don't think they appreciate it?
No, they don't at all.
Well, what if
And
it's
you can
just
blame Instagram for that.
unwarranted? But so, what if it's unwarranted? I mean, how would you feel? Switch the dynamic where someone is pursuing you, but you're just not interested, and this person is seen as a simp, but like you just don't want it. Like, are you a bad person for not reciprocating that because you just didn't want that?
Well, my argument is simply that women, right, have a privilege where they have a bunch of men approaching them, so they don't value male attention. Men value female attention, right?
That's a scarcity thing, but that's anything.
No, not really.
But if you get something of so little, the little you get is going to be valued. But this is like market.
Okay, who has a
though.
better? Let me ask you this then: if I took a self-made millionaire and I took a trust fund baby, both of them earned one earned their million at 18 years old, and the other one earned their million at 38 years old.
Sure.
Who's going to have a better appreciation for the dollar? Who's going to understand the value of a dollar better? The trust fund baby that got it at 18 or the person that earned it at 38?
But you from the outside can make that description, but you don't know what internally that person is
thinking. Can you please answer the question so I can kind of, I
mean, I know you want me to say that it'll be the person that earned it, of course.
Yes.
Because we can agree on that, but again, we're not in those positions to say that.
But here's the thing. That's why it's perfectly analogous. The reason why is because men are self-made millionaires. Women are effectively trust fund babies. At 18 years old, a woman is able to maneuver and be around higher status men simply for existing. Men are not allowed to be around higher status men unless they perform to be in that position. So what I'm trying to say is that women are in a privileged position where all the attention comes to them and they pick. Men, we're not in that position.
Okay. Well, my thing is I just want to ask you about this. I wasn't here to actually try to fight you on anything.
No problem.
You know, great for you opening up the floor in discussion.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Yeah, and just to kind of like explain that to everybody, when I make the point that, women don't value validation is because they get it all the time. By the time a woman hits puberty, she's getting hit on by men all the time. The average woman by the time she's 21 years old has been approached like 70,000 times. Versus men, you might get approached by a girl 10, 20 times in your lifetime, if that, right? For the average guy at least. So typically, what I mean by this is women simply just don't appreciate male attention the same way that men appreciate female attention. We're far more likely to appreciate women doing right by us.